right-wing group about let's find a better way to express ourselves. Let's find healing. Let's find reconciliation. If you're going to be an American and you're here in Charlottesville to talk about white America and white America only, then you're disenfranchising so many other people who really love this country as I do and want to take care of this country. Now, this pastor was white. He said there were white pastors and black pastors. They peacefully want to talk to the right group that was invited there by David Duke. And when they tried to talk to them, this is on air, he was saying they were being maligned and attacked. And these are pastors. These are men and women who are representing the gospel of Jesus Christ that Duke and his group, espoused those beliefs. And they were just basically trying to say, can we come together and have a meeting of the mind so that we can have a seat at the table of brotherhood? And instead, they were threatened. And so these pastors looked at them and said, well, wait, we don't have any arm here. We don't have any arms. We're here except armed with the gospel of Jesus Christ and armed with prayer and reconciliation and love for you. Well, the other group that was there, Antifa, stepped in to, as I was told by the pastor, Antifa stepped in to protect the Christians. So the whole thing became really crazy, and the way it was handled and by the police, it really mushroomed into something that didn't need to happen. Nevertheless, Heather Heyer was killed by an extremist who ran his car through a street of people, hitting them. Nevertheless, 2 helicopter pilots, state police officers, were killed trying to quell the violence by hovering over to make sure that they could give intelligence and good, communications. So we had a tragic situation that unfolded there. It's the same thing when young men of color are shot by police officers, and it's a sad thing when a white police officer can't walk into a community of color and embrace people there, and yet we see the opposite. At least I do by working with a group called Actively Caring for Policing and Actively Caring for People, and with the Center to Prevent Community Violence. So I see. From my perspective as a journalist, I see the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. And there's got to be a way that we can come together and accentuate the positives and let go of our negatives. And in the 21st century, in 2018, we have come so far, yet we have fallen so far behind in bridging this racial divide. I think it stems from the fact that we lack the true definition of love, freedom, and peace. And what I mean by that, I don't mean to go on, but what I mean by that, I'm talking about love based on the model given to us by Jesus Christ, who said, love God with all your heart, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. So that means when I look in the mirror, I have to love myself so that I can love someone else who doesn't necessarily look like me, talk like me, walk like me, act like me, believe like me. I'm not saying that they have to believe in Jesus Christ to get along with Kelly Wright. I'm saying that's how I live. And because of that love I have for him first, and then that love I have for myself, I want to spread that kind of love so that I can have peace with my fellow man, my fellow sister, and even with my enemies. And that's a tough thing, loving and praying for your enemies when you know they're out to kill you, wound you, and hate on you. But haters also motivate. They motivate me and instigate me to love even more and love even harder. But that kind of love leads to freedom. That means I have the freedom to go talk to anyone on any part of the globe, whether I'm in China, if I'm in Iraq, if I'm before an enemy that I know wants to kill me. I still have the freedom to talk to that person. That person might take me out, but they're going to know this man stood for something and didn't fall for anything. And then that kind of freedom leads to peace of mind, peace with people, and peace with the world. It's a tough thing. It's a sacrifice. It's a sacrificial kind of love because you're laying down your own career, as I did, in order to stand up for righteousness, peace, and joy.
So I wish I could just keep you for the all 12 million podcasts that we're going to do, because you're speaking some very valid truths. And the first point that I wanted to share with the audience and the listeners is the fact that everyone relates through pain, because we're not spared from pain. And there are those men and women like yourself that takes pain and turns it into purpose. And that in itself is a very hard journey to take, because oftentimes, even in the entrepreneurial world, or when you take this journey forward to stand for what is right, to work on kingdom principles, as you and I had previous conversation, the road becomes lonely.
Yes.
And those who you thought were your friends stop being your friends, because they don't want to get involved in situations that makes them feel uncomfortable, or that would put them in quote unquote negative light, because people do not like conflicts. Yeah. So first, I have to applaud you for standing for what is a humanitarian right of equality. Because I, in my own perspective, and I'm Asian, I'm Asian American from Filipino, that I have seen this. Sometimes I'm met with the questions personally that I don't look like what they say, quote unquote, a typical Filipina. I don't know what a typical Filipino is supposed to look, because the country I came from was overtaken by so many different nationalities, from Americans, Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, you name it. So what is a typical Filipino supposed to be? And even in my own ethnicity, I've been asked, am I mixed? Are you white and Asian? And I'm like, you know what? It's whoever took over the Philippines at this point. I'm pretty sure that when I run the DNA, tree, I'm related to so many people from around the world. But first of all, again, thank you so much for taking a stance. And even in 2018, it's just heartbreaking, and Janie can agree to this, to see that discrimination still very much exists. But at the same time, gives a joy that there are so many more people that are speaking up against it, led by the people like yourselves to say, hey, wake up. It's not just wake up America, it's wake up world.
Right. Exactly.
And through your movement. So I'm going to take a bit of a step back here, because you said something that it's just heartbreaking once again, just to know that even 3-year-olds are being conditioned for racism.
Yeah.
By their own parents. And yet these are potentially the same people that goes to church on Sundays or Saturdays and praises God. And, and it's just such a ironic existence is what I would call it, because I don't want to say anything ill, but it is an ironic existence, that you could be praising and then discriminating all under the same breath. But I'm going to bring it back to, other than the pain that you have gone through and planting legacy seeds, what is your ultimate why? Why are you doing all of this and going against the grain?
Well, I'll get very specific with that. I'm here because God put me here on this planet. And while I am far from perfect, I think the only time that I'll be perfect is when I get to be dead and gone and in heaven, where my task has been completed. But my why stems from a young woman who at the age of 16 was raped by a pastor. And she was given the choice of, first of all, she didn't tell anyone. She was afraid that the police would not hear her out, and it would be her word against the word, against the image and personality and pillar of her community, because the guy was a pastor. And so that 16-year-old girl had to confront her own dilemma as to, do I keep this child or do I move on? And still keeping this as a secret, not letting anyone know, and people, finding out about her pregnancy. And one day she returned home and her mother had a suitcase packed, and she said, "What's my suitcase doing here?" And her mother said, "Well, we're going to fly you far away to Nebraska to have an abortion." And that young 16-year-old girl at that time said, "I'm not going anywhere. God is telling me this is the only child I'll ever have biologically." And so that 16-year-old child went on to courageously and lovingly embraced that child. The child was born 5 days after her 17th birthday. She gave up her desire and aspiration to become a psychiatrist and continue to pour her life into that child to help that child understand his why. And that was to love God with all your heart, mind, and strength, love your neighbor as you love yourself, and spread love, freedom, and peace. That child is me. And that is my why. My why is to elevate and demonstrate the legacy that June Lorraine Overton Wright left me. And in fact, that's June right there. That's my mommy. And she's always in my heart. She is my why. And wow. The strength of her character and the strength of her love empowers me, and it's manifested in the fight that I recently had on a public level, and people who didn't understand that, who said injurious things and hurtful things. But yet I know who I am and whose I am. And I am a child of God. And I know other children of God who we all get lost. We all fall on the wayside. We all take different paths and we fall apart. And one of the worst things that could happen in the body of Christ and church is political divisions and racial divisions. I often tell people that when we, the people, come together in church, why is Sunday still one of the most segregated hours in America? And why do we come to church and we have people leaning to the left and leaning to the right? Actually, all of us should be leaning upward. And our common ground should be the God who we serve, not the political DNA, not the right, not the left, not the conservative, not the liberal. I'm sorry, John 3:16, let's see, for God so loved the world that whosoever would believe in Christ would not perish, but have everlasting life. For he didn't come in to condemn the world, but to bring us and to reconcile us together. So that's my why, to let the world know that we are all one, every race, every tribe. We have wars because of religion. We have wars because of tribal factions. We have wars because of racial divisions. We have wars because of political divisions. And it's maddening. It's crazy and it's insane how we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again when God has already provided us the answer. And that is to find that love for him and for each other and have that unity, which Christ himself prayed for.
Wow. I am just blown away at your understanding of your purpose and what you were birthed through this world. I mean, there's a strong, obviously, calling on your life and you knowing your purpose and finding the strength to continue to move on, I think is a lesson for us all, in looking at why do we do the things that we do and what moves us to do those things. And I heard this quote, that life can be heartbreaking. Through the hurt, keep singing, be a voice of hope. And that's a famous quote by Kelly Wright. And when I read that quote and just hearing your story, it makes sense to me. So I would love for you to share a little bit about just that ongoing project of love and freedom and peace and all the things that you're doing with your music concerts, speaking engagements, and just engaging people in that positive and inspirational dialogue, as a result of just listening to your story and your passion and where you are today in 2018 after all that you've gone through, and you're still smiling and you are still here breathing.